The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. It's Monday, April 9th, 2018, and on behalf of Simulations Plus, I welcome you to our second quarter fiscal year 2018 financial results conference call and webinar. Presenting this afternoon will be CEO and Chairman Walt Woltosz, Chief Financial Officer John Kneisel, and Division Presidents Ted Grisella of Cognigen and Brett Howell of DILIsym. An opportunity to ask questions will follow today's presentations. You may send your written questions using the questions pane on your control panel, or you may use the hand-raising icon on your control panel to ask your question directly. Please be sure to enter your unique audio PIN displayed when you join the call. This call is being recorded for playback at our website, simulations-plus.com. Before we get started with the presentations, we'll begin with the Safe Harbor Statement slide. It is now my pleasure to introduce Walt Woltosz, CEO and Chairman of Simulations Plus. Walt?
Thank you, Cameron and Renee, and hopefully everybody was able to read that Safe Harbor slide that quickly. I assume everyone on the call is familiar with the Safe Harbor. So if I say expect or anticipate or words to that effect, please understand that that is our best understanding of how things are going at this time, but there are no guarantees, or as our attorneys like to say, there can be no assurances. So overview, really outstanding news to report. Revenues for the second quarter up almost 29%, $1.7 million to $7.4 million. Income from operations up almost 35% to $2.4 million. Net income up 190.6% to $3.5 million, which includes a one-time non-cash $1.5 million deferred tax adjustment as a result of the new 2018 tax law. Diluted earnings per share increased to 19 cents per share, up 13 cents, and I think 8 cents of that is due to the deferred tax, so it still would be up 5 cents a share from the original 6 cents a share last year. Software renewal rates 89% based on number of accounts and 94% based on fees, and 15 new software clients added. For the 6 months, first half of 2018, revenues up again just under 30%, $3.3 million to $14.4 million. Income from operations, in other words, not including the deferred tax benefit, up $1.3 million, or almost 34% to $5 million. Net income up $2.6 million, 103% to $5.2 million, including the one-time non-cash $1.5 million deferred tax adjustment. And diluted earnings per share increased to 29 cents a share, up 14 cents. That does include the deferred tax benefit. Software renewal rates 85% for accounts and 91% based on fees for the first 6 months, and 36 new software clients added. Our consulting pipeline has been extremely full. Consulting demand in the industry seems to just keep increasing, and so we've seen a significant increase in our consulting revenues. And now I'll turn it over to John Kneisel, our Chief Financial Officer, for his report. John.
Thank you, Walt. Appreciate it. As Walt said, our net revenues increased 28.5%, about $1.7 million for the second quarter of the fiscal year. Lancaster was up 12.6%. Buffalo was up 12.2%, and North Carolina, or DILIsym, recorded $939,000 worth of revenues in this quarter. This is their second quarter of our fiscal year. They came on June 1st of 2017, so they weren't part of the numbers in the prior year. So of that, they are 900,000 of that $1,000,007 increase, the 28%. Our consolidated software revenues increased 10.6%, about $400,000, and our analytical study revenue is up $1.3 million. Our cost of revenues increased by $562,000. Of that, about $413,000 was the new costs that were at DILIsym for the quarter. Consolidated labor increased about 288,000, and other significant increases in costs were 182,000 of direct expenses on contracts, most of that coming from the North Carolina division on consulting contracts where they have to pay for lab testing costs. Software amortization was up about 46,000, and amortization expense associated with the acquired technologies at the new division was about 79,000. Cost of revenues as a percentage of revenue increased by about 1.6% during this period compared to the prior year. Our consolidated gross margin increased about 1.9 million to 5.2 million. DILIsym was 525,000 of that, and they had about a 56% gross margin this last quarter. The overall margin as a percentage of revenue decreased by about 1.6%. Now, the decrease comes mainly from this higher blend of consulting revenues compared, with the new division. The consulting revenues, if you can look at Buffalo and with North Carolina, they have a lower margin for those revenues because of the higher percentage of labor costs associated with those consulting revenues. And in North Carolina with the lab costs, when we have a chunk of lab costs that go into a contract, that'll come down. Last quarter we didn't have that as much. It just will fluctuate a little bit in that division. Our selling and G&A increased 392,000. 306,000 of that was from North Carolina, so it really wasn't that big of an increase relatively. Just the new divisional costs. And as a percentage, SG&A was about 32% compared to 34% in the prior year. Research and development, we incurred about $1.1 million of research and development costs. 640,000 was capitalized and about 500,000 was expensed. Total research and development increased about 360,000 in the quarter over the prior year, and 76,000 of that was an increase in expense. Income from operations increased $600,000 or 35% in the second quarter of 2018 compared to the prior year, and as a percentage of income, that was actually up 1.4%. I'm going to talk about the income taxes a little bit now. We had a large benefit of 1.1 million, not 1.9, sorry about that, compared to a tax expense of 600,000 the prior year. We finished our assessment of the deferred taxes based on the new tax rates enacted by Congress as of January 1st this year. Going through those, we ended up booking about a $1.5 million one-time tax benefit adjustment to our deferred tax liabilities, which comes in as one-time adjustment as we went from statutory tax rates for federal purposes of 34% to a 21% rate for our estimated future liabilities on taxes. That gave us this effective rate for the quarter, which was basically a negative tax expense of about 46% compared to a rate of about 33% the prior year. Now that means that that's not going to continue, obviously, with the 1% or with a one-time hit like that. So on an ongoing basis, we do expect to have the effect of the new tax law on us. And in the past, we've been running in the anywhere from a 29 to a 33% tax rate in a quarter, but we expect that to go down with the new rates. And so we can probably this year expect to be somewhere in a low 20% range for the year, and even in 2019 we may see that go down a little bit. It all depends on the amount of our permanent differences in tax credits and other stock-based compensation, however those come out. Our net income for the year increased 2.28 million, or for the 3 months was 2.28 million, which was, like Walt said, was up 190%, but 1.5 of that was related to this one-time charge, and without that deferred tax benefit, we still would have been up $800,000 or 44% for the quarter. Moving to the 6 months, the revenues were up 29.7%, 3.3 million. North Carolina recorded revenues of about $2 million, $2.1 million. All those are new revenues for us in the fiscal year compared to the prior year. The Lancaster division was up 11.1% to 8.6 million. Buffalo was up 11.6% to $3.8 million. All great gains in our core divisions. And consolidated software and software-related sales were up 10% by about $700,000. And while our study revenues and consulting revenues were up 66%, and that does include the revenues from the new division. The cost of revenues were up 33%. 2/3 of that increase came from the new division. Most of the costs are labor-related costs, and those costs of the increases from the direct contract costs and amortization costs for the newly acquired technologies associated with the acquisition. Overall cost of revenues as a percentage increased by about 0.7% as compared to the prior year. Our gross margin increased 2.3 million, or about 28% in the 6-month period. DILIsym showed about a $1.3 million gross margin at a 64% gross margin rate. 700,000 came from our California division, which showed an 82% margin. That one is more heavily software related. And the Buffalo division increased 300,000 or 15.8% with a gross margin of 58%. Overall, our margin as a percentage of revenue decreased by 0.7% for the year, holding pretty steady, even though the increase in the large increase in the consulting work in that period. SG&A expenses over the time period were up about 900,000. About 650 of that was from the DILIsym group, and as a percentage of revenues, SG&A was about 33% for this time period, which was actually down about 1.4%. The majority of that was just decrease in legal expenses associated with acquisition and other related items. Our research and development, we continue to put money back into the business, was about 1.9 million or $2 million total during the period. And of that amount, about 1.1 was capitalized and 800,000 was expensed. Total research and development increased 700,000, and the expense portion of that actually increased by about 146,000. Our income from operations increased by 1.3 million, or about 34% in the 6 months, and as a percentage of revenues from operations increased about 1% over the period. Again, we've talked about the provision for income taxes for this period. For the 6 months, it was a benefit of about 300,000 compared to last year as an expense. The majority of that, again, is the difference of the $1.5 million. We saw a little bit of tax rate help in this quarter because we had blended rates between the statutory 34% and 21% rates as they cut off on December 1st. We got new rates in that time period. And our effective rate was just a small benefit of about 6%. And last year we had about a 32% rate, is 31.8% in the period. And again, we've sort of talked about on a go-forward basis. This year will probably be in that low 20% range, and next year we could even see a better rate than that. Our net income during the period, 2.6 million for the 6 months, and which is including the 1.5 million, which represented about 57% of that change. Without that, we'd still have about a $1.3 million profit. Looking at diluted earnings per share, we're 29 cents. Would it be about 21 cents, and still would have been up about 6 cents for the time period. EBITDA still remains strong. That would not have been affected by the $1.5 million because it would have thrown the tax back into it, and it's still strong. It's up 1.4% or 30% over last year. Move on to the charts. You can see the consolidated revenue. We can see the progressive growth we've had since the fourth quarter of last year. You can see the big jump from 4 to 6.3 million last year. A chunk of that was the acquisition of DILIsym, but you can see we've had progressive growth throughout this entire time period. The next chart is income from operations. We've added this chart this time, so it is before taxes and will not be impacted by the $1.5 million adjustment as we go forward. We can just see the movement of the numbers, again, sort of in an upward direction. In the third quarter, you can see there's a little bit of a beginning anomaly there for 2015. I went back and looked at that. We had a large software sale carry into that 2015 year. That's why we see the little decrease there at the beginning. But consistently, we've seen revenue growth over the last several years and the years before that. Going to the next slide. In this quarter, if you look at the dark purple band there, you'll see what would be sort of the normalized income for the fiscal quarter in comparison to the large jump. It just makes it a little bit easier to see where numbers would have been without the tax deferred adjustment in it, but still shows the growth and the progression that we've consistently seen as a company. Moving to the next slide, and taking out 8 cents of the effect of that same tax benefit. See where the numbers are. Actually very happy with this, and that we're showing 11 cents for our second quarter, which is close to where we've been in our third quarter most years going forward. So the effect of our acquisitions is showing. Is really just really pleased with the numbers that we see that are coming out of the company here. Moving on. Consolidated EBITDA, our cash positions strong, consistently putting money back into the company to build our software products, and it's a stable company from an investor standpoint. Always feel good talking to people about the company. This next slide, no, go back, please. On the cash position, for those of you who've never maybe seen this slide before, there's 3 components of this slide. One is our quarterly cash position, which is the line here above the red line. Today we're sitting with, or as of last week, we're at about $8.5 million in cash. The blue bar is our dividends. This is about 4.5 years on this chart here. We've been paying 5 cents a share, increased that at the beginning of 18 to 6 cents a share. And the red lines are the uses of our cash where we've made strategic buys of companies, acquisitions, or uses of cash to buy out, in the one case of TSRL, a royalty agreement, or restructure that royalty agreement and ultimately buy it out. So we no longer have any royalty payments on that agreement. In the end, I went back and looked at the stock price at the beginning of this chart. It was $5 a share. Today, I believe it closed just near 16. So we're still in the same pretty good cash position, been making payments out to shareholders, and making acquisitions to grow the company. So very pleased. Next slide, please. Just some of the highlights. We got this going back to August, last audited balance sheet. We've maintained a cash balance. Our cash balances and cash balances per share. Our current assets are stable, solid going even into our third quarter. They're real solid. And our current liabilities are mostly acquisition-related liabilities, where we've got some payouts coming up later on in the year, and we've got which also that increase in those, when they flip from from long-term liabilities to current, actually dropped our current ratio a little bit. But really, everything's very stable and ready for the future. Walt, back to you.
Okay, John DeBella, the president of the Lancaster division, is traveling. I think he's over in Asia somewhere this week. So I will present his presentation for the Lancaster division. So our software products, we have 3 upgrades coming out in the next few months. Version 9.6 of Gastro Plus, our flagship product that generates the largest share of the software revenues, is scheduled for this month. This has been a lot of work on this one, going on in parallel with a complete rewrite of Gastro Plus into C++ at the same time. So very, very busy group here doing some outstanding work. We've got some new special population physiologies that are going in that will be enhancing one of our optional add-on modules. Also, we're improving all of our mechanistic absorption models in a variety of ways, again, enhancements to an optional add-on module. So hopefully generate more sales of those optional modules. ADMET Predictor is our program that uses artificial intelligence to predict properties of molecules from their molecular structure. It's been top rated in time after time in publications that compare various software programs, and in various modeling challenges that come out every few years. We consistently perform at the top of all of the 100 or so competitors that go into those. Version 9 is scheduled for release next month. This will update our high throughput pharmacokinetics HTPK simulation module. This is a unique capability to actually predict blood concentration versus time, bioavailability, and fraction absorbed for different dose levels, just from molecular structure. So this is a new optional add-on module. We're also improving the ADMET Modeler module. This is our artificial intelligence engine that we use to build our models. And we've applied that not only to pharmaceutical chemistry, but to some applications in some other industries that we would like to try to monetize and get into. DDD Plus, version 6.0, scheduled for summer 2018. In our FDA grant for long-acting injectable microspheres, we expanded DDD Plus to deal with the in vitro experiments that go along with that type of dosage form. So that expands our potential user base. We've also added some new abilities to use different precipitation assays in biphasic dissolution models, where you have a rapid dissolution phase followed by a slower dissolution phase typically. Membrane Plus, we released version 2.0 in September of last year that included new models to analyze data from liver cells, hepatocytes, which expands the user base. And we improved the integration with the ADMET Predictor module so that we can generate inputs for Membrane Plus from molecular structure, and that is an optional add-on module for Membrane Plus. We finally released version 2 of PK Plus in January. This is a program that we released first in about September of 2016, version 1, and a tremendous amount of feedback from users. They liked a lot of what they saw, but they said we also needed to do this and that, so we spent a year and a half making it do this and that, and now we have it out there being evaluated by a significant number of customers. This new version handles the 21 CFR Part 11 requirements. It adds a non-parametric superposition, which is just a fancy set of words for dealing with multiple doses over a period of time and modeling the pharmacokinetics. Next slide, please. So for Lancaster, revenue for the second quarter up 12.6%. Software revenue up 7%. You see the renewal rates there, 89% based on the number of accounts, but 94% based on the actual fees. Some of the accounts that we lose are academic accounts when a PhD student graduates, for example, who was using the program for their thesis and no one else in the department needs it. So their fees are extremely low or sometimes even free. But the renewal rate for the paying customers, you can see, is very nice, 94%. 8% increase in license unit, 8 new commercial companies, and 7 new nonprofit groups were added to our customer base. Consulting and training revenue is, as you can see, is growing at a remarkable rate, up 83%. We've got projects ongoing with 26 companies, plus our 2 FDA-funded collaborations. The bar chart you can see up there shows the number of software license units sold per quarter. And you can see the trend is a very nice trend, very similar to the financial trends that John Kay showed a few minutes ago. And you can see our revenue breakdown in the pie chart there. So about 75% of our revenues are from renewals, about 12% are new sales, about 12% software sales, and about 12% consulting, and about 1% for training. Next slide, please. For the 6 months, similar numbers. Don't need to read all of these to you, but you can see the trends are pretty well the same. Of course, the number of new groups is about double what it is for 1 quarter, since we have 2 quarters here. Percentages remain fairly similar, about 72% from renewals, 14% from new sales for software, 13% for consulting, and 1% for training. Next slide, please. As far as the distribution of customers, it seems to remain pretty close to these numbers quarter over quarter and year over year, around 41% or so North America, Europe about a third, and Asia around 25–26%, with more than half of that out of Japan, which is our largest single country, considering Europe to be a variety of countries. Europe, of course, would be bigger on the whole, but as a single country, Japan is actually the 2nd largest pharmaceutical industry in the world. Next slide, please. Marketing activities. We do a lot with website, with social media, so we've been increasing our production of video content. We've increased the focus on search engine optimization performance, and continuing migration of content from our different division sites to our main corporate site for Simulations Plus. We held a PBPK workshop at the University of Maryland. That's physiologically based pharmacokinetics, the thing that GastroPlus does so well. We hosted 6 on-site trainings at individual companies, and we attended 2 scientific conferences during the first quarter and delivered 3 poster and podium presentations. First quarter, of course, is over the winter holidays, and so there's not quite as much conference activity that goes on during that quarter. Strategic digital marketing initiatives. We did host 3 webinars on modeling and simulation applications, and we do continue with our very active social media campaigns through Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. And the number of followers have increased 20% versus February a year ago. And our GastroPlus user group membership increased 8% versus the previous year. Next slide, please. And now I'll turn it over to Ted Grasella, President and Director of the Cognigen Division. Ted.
Thanks, Walt. It's a real pleasure actually to see how these numbers all add up to the performance of the company, and it's very rewarding to myself and our staff to see the responses that we've been getting from clients for our services. In 2018, we had relationships with 25 companies working on a total of 38 drugs and 62 projects overall. So far in this fiscal year, we've started to work with 2 new companies. We have 2 new projects that are just starting. Of the old projects that we had, 11 of them expanded in scope. There were 3 projects with reduced scope, primarily because the drugs didn't respond as they were expected to as part of the development program. And our pipeline is very healthy with 41 outstanding proposals with 28 different companies. Picking up on the theme that Walt talked about before about our marketing of our services, really being based on interactions with our clients and communicating with both our clients and people we hope are going to be clients about the quality and the diversity of the work that we do. So far at scientific meetings, we've had 7 posters and 5 peer-reviewed publications. One of our posters actually won a blue ribbon at a recent clinical pharmacology conference for the sophistication of the material that was presented. And when we're not working on consulting projects, we're working on 20 publications and 5 conference abstracts for presentations of material at upcoming meetings. The PAGE meeting is the pharmacometrics meeting in Europe, and we'll be presenting 2 posters on new functionality that we've incorporated into the Kiwi platform during that meeting. For a while now, the most common area that we work in has been oncology, and that's followed by neurology, endocrinology, infectious disease, and actually also global health. Overall, the really important part of our deliverables are the way that they're incorporated into regulatory filings, and it's been a constant theme that nearly half of the projects that we work on end up being incorporated into a regulatory interaction or submission of some sort in any given year. Next slide. The way that we've been continuing to develop our pipeline and ensure a constant flow of business has been increasing marketing and sales activities, primarily through the use of posters and presentations at scientific meetings. We've been continued to recruit new scientific talent and have been quite successful at that, so that we're able to handle the increase in work that we have. The nature of our services continue to expand, and as I mentioned, we have a healthy pipeline of new projects, including a number of global health projects that we continue to expand on. Global regulatory filings, where the information from one region is used to justify regulatory approval in another, is an important part of our work. And we continue to look for opportunities to embed our services into our client partners so that we're involved in those compounds as they move through the life cycle from first in human to commercialization of new medicines. We've been working on developing cross-selling opportunities with both Simulations Plus and DILIsym. Of course, we've been at this now for a little over 3 years, and so we have really good relationships with any number of the scientists at Simulations Plus. We're still feeling our way with our colleagues in DILIsym, but actually right now we're in the process of finalizing a proposal and dealing with some questions from a potential client that would involve the use of all 3 of our services. So this is enabling us to create and continue to create broader spectrum of business models for our clients and expanding scientific synergies across the scientist and letting us to be more creative and innovative in bringing solutions to our clients. And of course, in the back of all of this is the work that we're doing on the Kiwi communication platform and we continue to identify new functionality, and we're, as a result of some of the hires that we've had in this past 6 months, able to accelerate deployment of some of that functionality. Thank you.
All right, well, thanks, Ted. This is Brett Howell, president of the DILIsym Services Division. I just want to take a few moments to comment on our quarter as well. So if we go to the next slide, please. Just since we are relatively new to the group, I'll take a moment just to mention again who we are as a division and how we fit into the overall picture. We focus on safety primarily through the use of our DILIsym platform, or drug-induced liver injury prediction software platform. We also focus on evaluating treatment for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, that's NAFLD, our NAFLD-Sym program, and also NASH, another related liver disease. So we do both pharmacology, but also safety. Next, please. Just a quick review of our fiscal Q2 sales. In terms of our breakdown, we did about 67% of our revenue from DILIsym related consulting projects, about 19% from software licensing, and 14% from NAFLD-Sym projects. Over time, we expect the NAFLD-Sym portion of that to grow as we expand that platform. We had 18 active consulting projects related to DILIsym, and we were using the software through all of those projects to help companies predict drug-induced liver injury or understand issues that they were having in those areas. These projects often involve data management and collection as well as analysis using our software. For NAFLD-Sym, we had 2 active consulting projects going, one of which is a very significant development project which will increase the scope and our capabilities with the software. And again, NAFLD-Sym is focused on helping companies evaluate targets and the effectiveness of potential drugs for those targets. Finally, in terms of licensing our DILIsym platform, we have 9 active consortium members who are licensing the software. That's the vehicle through which we make it available for companies to use internally, and we are continuing to work through the avenue of the consortium to add new science and new features to DILIsym. We're actually completing the process right now of giving the FDA additional licenses to the software, or in the past, they've already licensed it. Next slide, please. In terms of our products, we have version 7A was released in January, and by all accounts, it's running smoothly. We've received good feedback. We've also are working on version 8A for release in early 2019. In the meantime, we are working on an exciting project refactoring and recoding the software to be very tightly integrated with GastroPlus, so that will be coming in the future. And we're also, as I said, adding some features to NAFLD-Sym, including fibrosis and inflammation, to make it more capable, and that will be coming at the end of 2018. Finally, we're looking to expand into the safety of the kidney, and we have currently put forth a grant proposal to fund this that we're waiting on final funding decision. Next slide, please. On the marketing and sales front, just a few quick notes. We had a very successful 3-day workshop in San Diego, which is one of our first. That was in parallel with the GastroPlus workshop, so there's a very good example of synergies across the divisions. We had some great interest at the Society of Toxicology meeting in San Antonio, where we exhibited with both Cognigen and Simulations Plus Lancaster, and we had a nice joint presentation with John DeBella and myself, had a joint presentation focused on DILIsym plus GastroPlus and the power of using these tools together. And finally, we continue to make website revisions that will allow customers to see, coherent and improved look in terms of their look and feel on the web for the 3 divisions coming together. Next slide, please. So just to summarize, the products currently out there are working well. We're continuing to expand and looking to move into a new area. We continue to find synergies, as you've heard from the other speakers, with Lancaster and Cognigen, or Buffalo division. Our number of consulting clients is growing. We're now well over 30 companies who have used the software for various development purposes, and we also continue to grow the number of licenses overall. We've now had 19 companies license DILIsym throughout the life of the consortium. Of course, we hope to continue to move that number forward as well. So that concludes my slides. Walt?
Let me unmute myself here. All right, so just to summarize, next slide, please. Second quarter, again, outstanding numbers. Revenues up almost 29%. Income from operations 35%. So neither of those are affected by the tax rates, but the net income certainly is, with the 2.3 million, 190+%, including the deferred tax. But even still around, what was it, 44%, even without the deferred tax benefit. For the 6 months, revenues up almost 30%, income from operations 34%, and net income just over 100% with the deferred tax. Diluted earnings per share increased to 29 cents per share for the 6 months, up 14 cents, and about 8 cents of that is from the deferred tax benefit. So 6 cents was due to just normal operations, which includes the DILIsym acquisition. So very nice comparison for the quarter and the 6 months. All three divisions performing well: California, Buffalo, and North Carolina. We are realizing synergies. We've gotten now a nice intermediate connection between GastroPlus and the DILIsym software. The DILIsym software needs the output of PBPK simulations, which GastroPlus provides, as inputs to the DILIsym. And so we've now made that much more convenient. The integration will continue to be improved as we refactor GastroPlus and reprogram the DILIsym software into C++. There are new guidance documents issued by the FDA and the EMA. The new commissioner of the FDA, Scott Gottlieb, is a very strong proponent of modeling and simulation, and we think that that may be one of the reasons our consulting work is going up so quickly. Many companies don't have the expertise to run these very sophisticated software programs in-house, and so they contract for that work, and we're benefiting from that. As we do that for them, they learn, and so very often what we've seen over 20+ years is that our consulting customers eventually become software customers. And so they finally get to the point where they realize that they would actually save money by licensing the software and hiring someone internally to run it with our support, of course. For us, that means a higher margin sale. The software margins are very high compared to consulting, and that gives our consulting team the opportunity to go and work with new potential customers. So we definitely believe that Simulations Plus continues to lead the trend towards more use of modeling and simulation in pharmaceutical, food products, cosmetics, and general chemistry industry in research and development. With that, we'll open it up for questions. And Renee, are you going to moderate the questions?
This is Cameron. I'll be reading through the questions. And once again, if you'd like to ask a question using the telephone, please use the hand raising icon on the control panel, and also you enter the unique audio pin for that as well. We'll start off with some questions from Howard Halpern. Why do you believe consulting services for the industry seems to be booming? What is your pipeline of consulting revenue within each division?
Okay, well, I'll comment on that. I just did actually briefly. I think well, several reasons. Software is one of the, if not the highest productivity tool out there. When you can do something in software that either replaces an in vitro experiment, an animal experiment, or a clinical trial, you save tremendous amounts of time and money. Now, that doesn't happen every day, but very often what it also does is guide you to choose which experiments you're going to run and in what order. And so, as is commonly known, most molecules fail to become drugs. The winner is a needle in the haystack almost, out of all the molecules that are examined every year. And we have the ability now to examine millions and millions of molecules a year, at least in software. Very few of them will ever make it all the way through the cycle to become drugs. So that if you can eliminate any of those in software without even having to make the molecule, you've saved a tremendous amount of time and money. And I always like to say that drug that fails out there in a phase 3 clinical trial was bad 15 years before when the chemist first drew it. They just didn't know it. And so the more that we can eliminate up front, the fewer those failures that we can experience in very expensive clinical trials, the better it is. So I think that's why the consulting services are booming, as I say, because these are sophisticated programs that require quite a bit of expertise to use properly. And I think the industry has not been able to get employees who are facile with these tools as rapidly as they have the need to see the results. Pipeline of consulting revenue, I'm not able to answer that. Maybe John Kay, could you answer for Lancaster?
I think John, from my understanding, John's just gone, and there's been a sort of backloaded, a backloaded section, and it just opened up when we hired more employees back, and we're filling in stuff that has been out there, a pent-up demand for some of our services out there. He's now going after the business that was out there.
Okay, thanks. I think Ted, you do the most consulting at Cognigen. Do you want to address that one? Ted, you there?
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The way that I'd like to answer that is to simply say that we keep track of the outstanding proposals as we send them out, and of course we keep records of which ones we're successful with and which ones we aren't and why. But right now we have 41 outstanding proposals with 28 different companies, and so for us that represents a really robust pipeline in terms of incoming projects.
And Ted, this is Cameron. One follow-up question, I guess, on the Cognigen side. Within the industry, how is QE being viewed, and how solid is the growth pipeline in that segment of your business?
Yeah, so we've been continuing to add functionality that we believe will make the platform more attractive to a variety of different types of users. We've been experimenting with different groups from different environments, and everyone has very positive things to say about the software and the way that it's been designed and intended to be used. One of the great things about the project that we're working on for the Gates Foundation is that we're actually getting to use it in the development of some specific projects, specific drugs. And so not only are we able to test out different functionality, but we're also able to show how that can serve as a prototype for its use in a variety of different environments and different sectors of the industry. So we continue to be at a place where we're developing and testing new functionality, continuing to demonstrate the software at different scientific meetings, and doing what we can to encourage people to share our vision for the platform.
Great. Next question, this is on the Lancaster side, is where does your current penetration into commercial customers stand, and how do you anticipate future growth within the software sales?
Commercial customers, I'm assuming
I think the large blue chip customers, or even the pharmaceutical companies for the software sales.
Yeah, I mean, most of our customers are commercial customers. Our best guesstimate some time ago was based on the FDA registry of about 2,500 companies, and we probably are in the order of 10 to 15% of that number of companies. The fact that we keep adding at a pretty aggressive rate new customers every quarter, I think, is an indication of the increasing sophistication in the industry, for one thing, to learn to use simulation and modeling, where 21 years ago we started, the term in silico didn't even exist, meaning in the computer, as opposed to in vitro in the lab or in vivo in life. So I think the trend is going to continue. I feel quite optimistic about it. But again, as my attorney would say, there can be no assurances. But 10 or 15 years ago, we wondered where will this begin to plateau, and it just hasn't happened yet. So I think as we continue to expand the capabilities of the software, the knowledge base, the underlying science keeps growing. We learn more and more, for example, about how to model different populations, going from premature babies born up to 16 weeks premature. We couldn't do that 10 years ago. Now we do it routinely. Looking at Asian populations and other ethnic populations, how you change what happens in the intestinal tract for different populations, different ages and genders and ethnic groups. So all of these things are built on a knowledge base that continues to grow. And as we understand more about enzymes and transporter proteins that affect many drugs, the better we can model those. So I don't see this ending anytime soon. It's just going to continue to grow.
Okay, one quick follow-up on that. As far as the current, penetration with our existing customers of the top pharma companies, and with the India growth we showed on the slide, is that from, stemming all from the new contract we established there last year?
John DeBella would have to answer that, but it makes sense to me, the fact that we do have a distributor in India now that is promoting the product, and we have had our scientists go to India to do workshops and trainings. That certainly, that market, Asia in general, India, China, Korea, some of the other countries in that region certainly have come on where, probably 5 or 6 years ago, we hardly had a customer in those countries.
Okay, next question. How are the synergistic opportunities between DILIsym and the two other divisions progressing?
Well, I mentioned part of that. The DILIsym software needs the outputs for population simulations from physiologically based pharmacokinetics, PBPK software, and that's what GastroPlus does so well. And these simulations can be pretty complicated. And what we have done as an initial integration of the two is to provide an output file from GastroPlus that can be loaded directly into DILIsym without having to do a lot of hand manipulation to reorganize things and get them into a format that DILIsym could input. So that part is done, it's working. You still have to run each program separately. What we would like to do eventually is to be able to fire up the DILIsym software from within GastroPlus and have all of the information that's needed just passed through memory, so that you don't have to do anything other than start the program and set up the parameters you want to run a simulation. So that has progressed well. I heard Ted mentioned a proposal with Cognigen and DILIsym working together. I don't know the technical details of that one, but we've been working now with DILIsym for 3 quarters, the 4th quarter of last year and the first 2 of this year. A lot of work has been done. A lot of nice things are working already, and I just see the integration continuing to improve as we go forward.
Great. Next question would be for Ted and Brett. Could the presidents of both Cognigen and DILIsym discuss the scalability of their business on a high-level basis? What is the opportunity for the top line growth?
Yeah, I can start, Ted. This is Brett with DILIsym. Certainly, I'd be happy to discuss that in a general sense. We have 2 different lines of revenue, as discussed clearly today. One is our consulting side, and one is our licensing side for the DILIsym platform and our potential future products. So, as you might imagine, on the licensing side, the scalability is very high, and really the only limitation there is acquiring those customers. We can make that software available and sell those licenses as customers want to use them. Our software is a little bit specialized, and so we do oftentimes use it for customers through consulting. And on the consulting side, we do have the barrier of needing to add additional trained and scientists who can use the software internally for consulting. So that's always going to be a concern with any consulting activities, is that with any companies, that you need to scale that by adding trained individuals to use it. However, we've been working hard at getting in place over the last many years processes and procedures and report formats and styles and presentation milestone goals and styles, etc., to really facilitate the use of new employees with the software and doing these consulting projects. So I actually feel quite positive about our ability to scale as our consulting demand continues to grow. We have on the order of 14 to 15 proposals currently outstanding for consulting, both in terms of model use and also model construction and new tool development. And all total, that's well over $5 million of new proposals. Again, those are over a long period of time or certain different periods of time and at various places in the proposal process. So I'm not saying that's, all of those are imminent, but that's certainly our pipeline currently. So I think feel fairly positive about our ability to scale both on the consulting side and certainly on the software side. Ted?
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, so the nature of the business at Cognigen is primarily consulting revenue, and there, over the years, we've spent a lot of time and effort in streamlining our processes and getting them down so that we deliver a consistently high quality product in a timely way. So I feel really very good about all of that work that has been done, and we're leveraging that now as our consulting pipeline continues to fill up. But as you can imagine, a consulting business can only scale so far. So as you continue to bring in projects, we have to continue to bring in new scientists. And we've been successful at both of those requirements, and feeling really good about the consulting side. The Kiwi platform is the opportunity to really scale up in a rather large way, and that is still in the process of being developed and fleshed out. So I don't know what to say about that particular part of it, but I feel really good about having created a system for the consulting that's as efficient as it could be.
Great. Two quick questions for John. What do you expect your effective tax rate to be for all of fiscal 2018 and 19? I know you've touched on that already. And the second question, will there be any material impact from the new revenue recognition accounting rule 606?
Okay, I'll handle the 2018. I'm expecting it to be somewhere in the low 20s. I mean, it's a little, like I said earlier in the call, it's a little hard to estimate some of the effects of the permanent differences and what's going to hit during that time period, but clearly the rates are lower. I don't have any concerns that it's going to affect us this year substantially, but I can't really quite get there in all the estimates that I have to do, because there's some moving parts there, but it should be in the low 20s somewhere. And 2019 should be a few points lower than 2018. Again, all for the same reasons. And the second question was related to the 606. All indications are that there'll be some effect. Not sure how big it's going to be. I'm not seeing a lot of effect based on the analysis that's being done right now. So I'll know more at the next call that we have. I should be done with most of the analysis by that time. But not really seeing any real big hits based on the way we sell our software here on an annual renewal model. There really doesn't seem to be anything there, and we're on a percentage of completion on our consulting revenues, and that really isn't concerning me a lot at this point.
Great. We have two more questions. One is a follow-up. You mentioned that there was some pent-up demand that you were able to take advantage of by hiring talent. Any sense where that pent-up demand level is at now?
You know, I don't want to finish that question much farther than that. I was answering for John, who's not on the call. He would have a better sense of answering that. I just know that we're able to really flex up really quickly once we have the personnel in place at this point, and we're seeing some really good results of that at this point here in Lancaster.
And the final question, is there any indication as the launch of version 2.0 of PK Plus and how those sales have started to ramp up?
Again, John DeBella would be the person to answer that in detail. It's only been out here for 8 or 10 weeks, and you know, the sales cycle for software tends to run probably on average 3 to 6 months, sometimes longer. And for a product like this, where there is a competitive product already out there that people license, typically on an annual license and sometimes on a 3-year license, it may be that we have to wait for those annual licenses to expire, which is probably happening every month, you know, somewhere, before we might be able to get some market share away from the competitive product. So I don't have a good solid answer for you on that. And John DeBella would be the one that would know the details, you know, how many companies are actually evaluating right now and what sort of feedback we're getting.
Well, great. That does conclude the questions that have been submitted. Walt, if you wanted to say a quick closing remarks, then I'll finalize the conclusion of the conference call.
Yeah, I think you know, the company continues to grow. We are always shopping. John showed you our cash, you know, with the outlays that we've had. I think somewhere on the order of $13 million in acquisition costs and the buyout of the TSRL agreement altogether, and another, I don't know, it's probably almost a similar amount in dividends that we paid out since we started paying a dividend. And yet our cash still seems to stay right in that same range. And you saw the growth in the last 3 data points there, where you know, it's just on a nice upward slope now. We will have some cash going out as we pay back the earnout portion of the DILIsym acquisition, but we're generating cash at a healthy rate, and I see a bright future so far. I see no reason to think otherwise.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call. One final note, management will be presenting at several upcoming investor conferences, the Needham Emerging Technology Conference on May 15th and 16th in New York City, as well as the LD Micro Invitational on June 5th, and that is in LA. This concludes today's conference call and webinar. If you missed any part of today's call, the replay will be available at our website, simulations-plus.com. Thank you for joining us today.